Board. Welcome, Melissa. Thank you once again for leading. Take it away.
Uh, Thank you, Miss Evelyn. And I feel very honored to be your friend. And Miss Evelyn and I met through this organization, but then got involved in some other organizations, and I had to step away from that a little bit. So it was just the bright point of my day to be able to get on this Zoom and see Miss Evelyn's face this morning. And I just want to thank you all for coming. For those of you who don't know, um, my career was in marketing and communications. I'm mostly retired from that. And I have spent most of my time now writing stuff that I want to write. And so I'm also working on a memoir that I just finally got a publisher for that for a small press. And last month I was so excited because I had just heard before we logged on that a piece of mine was accepted in the New York Times. So I was super duper excited about that. It was called in their Tiny Love. If you get the New York Times, their Tiny Love Stories column. Um, I also, in my spare time, I volunteer for a program that is called Master Gardeners, that is designed to help the community really learn about sustainable gardening and landscaping. And as you can see from my background, I live in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. Just recently moved here right before the pandemic, came out here to help with my mom a little bit because she was getting to the point where she was needing some help. She has since passed, but we stayed here, and I need sunshine in my life every day. So anyway, that's a little bit about me. I would just like to kind of go around. I'm originally from the Midwest, by the way. Um, and so I have those Midwestern roots that everybody's my friend. I love everybody, and I just want to know more about them. And so then I start asking some. My husband is like, "You're kind of nosy," and I was like, "I just need to get to know people." So anyway, that's a little bit about me. Before we really get dig into the conversation, I just want to do a little icebreaker and share something, and I'll start share something with the group. And I'm kind of excited that this is a little group. We'll just be able to share a lot. And I probably should apologize ahead of time because I have this now, my second cup of coffee in here. So I hope I don't ramble too much. But anyway, share something that a lot of people might not know about you. And so I'll start. And when I grew up, we lived in a little small town, and then we moved out to the country, kind of in a nefarious reason. My dad was practicing alcoholic at the time, and he felt like the country would be the geographical cure of his alcoholism, which is pretty common in the recovery community. But at any rate, one of the things that I learned to do while I was there was butcher chickens and rabbits. And it's some of my published pieces. But anyway, it was just something that when I tell people these stories, they're like, seriously, you? Because I live in a pretty urban area and people just wouldn't guess that about me. So who wants to go next? Or I'll just select somebody. Mind well, how about you?
Hi, I'm not sure what my little known fact might be, and I can't remember if I said this before, but I live in Iowa, and I've lived here for a very long time. And I hope that most people wouldn't guess where I was born, but I was born in New York City, and I grew up in the Village. And I loved it so much that when we moved to Connecticut, I hated New England and I thought people were really snobby. So I always consider myself a New Yorker. So there's my little known fact.
Nice. You can just select somebody from there.
Okay, well, Jane better tell us more about her.
I don't know that there's anything that is unknown about me. But that being said, I've had a very interesting Life, I'm kind of a deep thinker, so everything is on a broad scope, but I I love people and I need to be around them and my heart feels open, but I'm very shy and I'm a little bit on the autism scale. So people don't know what to do with me and I'm inappropriate sometimes. And that is just the worst combination, to really long for intimacy and not be able to do it because I'm fine as long as, even with my best friends, I'm fine as long as I'm a certain distance, but I can't get that intimacy. So this is the lifetime I'm working on that.
Thank you for sharing something so personal, Jane. Thank you. You can go ahead and pick. Yeah.
Ooh, let's have Kenneth talk. I can't see him, but I'd like to hear about him.
Okay. That's kind of interesting. I spent the first 5 years of my life in Ajo, Arizona, which is about 90 miles south of Phoenix. It was a copper mining town. It was a company town, Phelps Dodge. My father was a school teacher there in the school district for those years. And there was a pit mine. There was a pretty rudimentary, but perfectly adequate company housing, unless you happen to be Mexican. And then if you were Mexican, there was a place they called, I think, I forget what they called it, Mexican town or something like that. It was even more basic, just I think almost like huts at the top of the mine, and that's where the Mexican workers lived and survived in very basic conditions.
Okay. Kenneth, do you want to choose someone else? And Kathy, I'm sorry, just a second, Kenneth. Kathy, we're just doing a little icebreaker, introducing yourself and telling the group one thing that somebody might not know about you.
And Andrea?
You're on mute.
Okay. Hi. So I'm Andrea. One thing that people, I don't know, might not know about me is I also lived in Arizona. We lived in Phoenix for a couple of years. I think my favorite thing to do there was going hiking in February because it was the only time that it was tolerable to be outside. But yeah, that's probably about it. And I love hiking. So can't really do much of that in Chicago. We're known as the Flatlanders. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that's about it. So how about Evelyn?
Thank you. Yeah, speaking of Arizona, well, my grandson has finished university at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix. So
Ah,
there's a little connection going on here. But about
Nice.
me, I love culture, love people. And that was really rooted in me from a kid. My great grandfather was Irish, and my grandmother was part Choctaw. So I look for moments to find people who are different cultures. And I know I started a conversation because my mother taught me how to do that. So I just love being around people who are um, from different places. Kathy.
Kathy, can you introduce yourself and tell us a fact that somebody may not know about you? Okay, well, we can go ahead and get started. Again, everybody, thanks for coming. if you were here for both sessions, we spent a lot of time last meeting actually talking about actual moments in the book. And I thought since most people have likely finished the book, it might be good to just talk about some of our impressions and kind of move forward into the next phase of actions of what we could do. But like last time, I've just kind of prepared a list of questions to kind of get us to kick off. And go ahead and raise your hand if you want to speak first, and you can either raise it virtually or do the reactions, and so we can make sure that everybody has time to speak.
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, we can, Kathy. Thank you.
Okay.
You want to go?
I was talking before, but I guess you couldn't hear me.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Um, I guess something that people commonly don't know about me is that I used to be a police chaplain. I did that for 9 years, and other than that, I appreciate being able to serve as a chaplain in a hospital or with the VA or anywhere else.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So let's just go ahead and hop in. So, how do you, I'm just going to pose this right off. How do you think that Javier survived, not just physically, but emotionally? And not just through the journey, but the physical journey, but then later on as he grew. Who wants to start us off?
I'll start. And I wrote down that he survived by finding joy. He was in joy and community, but he survived by finding joy. And I wrote down this quote, I believe is from page 101. It says that, make sure here. They were in the boat, right? And it says they glide in the air for meters and meters. They ride the wind like bullets, like skinny balloons, more and more. We're gonna make it, I whisper. It's a good sign, Chino says. We're gonna make it. That to me right there was like I could put the book down and just not read anything else. He found joy. The hope was there too. There are so many different themes that are floating in this book. There's hope, there's identity, there's fear, there's resilience. But at the end of the day, though, the focus maybe was on that some, but that joy had to be there. So I think that's how he survived.
Yeah. Anybody else? Don't jump all in at once.
I was gonna just use the hope word. That's the word that came to my mind. I didn't I should have looked at the questions when I was reading it, but it became a page turner. So I didn't look at anything. I just like couldn't wait to finish reading the book. Um but my thought was that he hoped that he made it to his mom. I just my book just fell out to this page, and it says that he also hoped other people made it to their moms. So Marcelo was going to his mom, and he says, he taught us to say that word FAAK. I don't like him, but I hope he makes it to his mom. And that's really what the whole time that Javier was trying to do was get to his mom. And that's a strong bond, you know, the mother and child bond. So it's hope. And I love that Evelyn said joy because that's my word this year. So I think he did find little bits of joy in the desert.
Yeah, I think that's so true. The hope and the joy, and I'll go to trust. He trusted not just himself, because I don't know if we all know it was told, the story was told from a 9-year-old's point of view. But he trusted the people around him. He trusted that his parents were doing the right thing for him. And he had that community around him. And I thought about times in my own life when things have gotten hard, and that community and that trust is so important. You've got to trust the process. You've got to just keep moving on and depend on your community in order to survive sometimes. So those were things that really resonated with me with it. Anybody else? Yeah, Kenneth, please.
Okay, full disclosure, I listened to a 15-minute summary on an app, so I haven't read the book.
No worries.
The one of the things that he did mention was that he would had this very creative ability to come up with games, and he would turn challenging situations into a game in which he would seek to overcome that challenge. And if I remember correctly, he came up with illusions. He had his own fantasies, as it were, or illusions of how things would be when he met his parents and what the that would be like. And he rehearsed those in his mind, and that helped him to maintain a sense of joy and hope and resilience.
Yeah, I really like the use of resilience too, because I think that's so true. Jane, please help. Can you?
I'm in the beginning of the book, like I mentioned, but curiosity. He
Yeah,
so wants to learn about everything, and he's like a sponge. And any new information he can get, and it like pulls him along with the joy. I mean, he's got joy and hope in his curiosity, and yeah, he's just like a sponge, and it makes his world expansive instead of small.
yeah. And and that piece would I mean, when you learn those things so young and how that will carry you on throughout your life, what an impact that is. Um, I had to catch myself because I started to say what a blessing that is, but it's not a blessing that he had to go through that experience. But sometimes those things that you learn about life in the deepest, darkest times, they shape you in really positive ways moving forward. And I guess I found myself also hoping for that in his everyday life today, as an adult, and I have listened to interviews since then, since reading the book, that talk about his, issues with his parents and different things that have happened since then. And it's like you just hope that overall that it left him with good things, positive things. Anybody else before we move on? All right, let's go to the next question. So, we know from turning on the news that this story is happening to millions of people every day, um, and I guess I'm curious to know, and I can start with this one. If you've known anybody or you yourself have been in situations where you could personally relate to this story and how that shapes your life. And I guess I have two experiences that um, one as a child and then one as an adult that really made me um, question. And I think and question the way we do things in our society. The first one was, my mother was she wasn't born in Arizona, but she spent a good part of her childhood in Arizona and then moved here when she was 13. And so she grew up in this very multicultural environment. And but I was raised in a really conservative rural environment in Indiana where it was pretty lily white, you know, and not just that, but pretty monoculture in terms of um, religion and just everything. So it was an environment where you didn't know what you didn't know because you just didn't know. But anyway, we had a lot of, it was farmland, and we had a lot of migrant workers. And I may have even shared this last month, but people in my school, we would take all kinds of things to the migrant camps, like clothes and canned goods and all different kinds of things. And I never understood. I was little. I mean, you know, 5, I remember. And I didn't understand. And I'd ask my mom, I was like, why, you know, don't you know that these people have mansions in Texas and Mexico? And my mom stopped and she was like, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, everybody at school is talking about it." And it was just she like stopped what she was doing. I don't even remember where we are, but she just stopped and she was like, "That is not true." And she, you know, explained the whole process of, you know, in a developmentally appropriate way with me to address this horrible story that was being perpetuated in our community, um, which isn't really any different than what's happening now in our country. And so then it really, you know, from that moment on, it was like, wow, you can't believe everything that you hear, and you have to stand up when you hear things that are inaccurate. So that was this moment in as a child. But then when we moved out here, I got a job at a university that was involved with a national education grant that targeted help in getting kids into post-secondary education, whether that's trade schools or college or whatever. And it was in um, areas that were typically underserved and in impoverished areas. And one of the we put out a senior guide for high school seniors, and it's actually in our resources, that talks about how undocumented students can get access to resources. And as part of that process, I learned more about the the classification of dreamer students and dreamer individuals. And I didn't realize like what kind of the level of documentation that they have to go through every, you know, 6 to 12 months just to stay in the United States. And um, it made me think like, wow, I had no, I mean, the stress, and that was all before the political environment that we live in now. And it just made me reevaluate, my gosh, you know, the stress that that would put on a person on, you know, a daily basis is really intense. And again, really made me stop and think about the things that I hear versus the truth. And I think it's always really good to question those things, no matter what environment you're in. So that's kind of my little piece on this part of the story. Sorry, I kind of rambled a little bit longer than I intended. Please, someone else share.
I'll go next. Mine is a little bit different. It's about an experience that I had when I was teaching public speaking in Germany, because in my classroom there were students from different countries. And I might have talked about this one briefly before. If I did, I did. So, but anyway, my assignment for one particular group of students for this one class was culturally informative speeches. That's what they had to write about. And I just remember this one girl approaching me. She said, and I'll keep this really short. She said, I'll back up here. She and her mom and brothers and one other sister had arrived in Germany as refugees. And they lived initially in a refugee camp. That's different from an immigrant, and that's a different topic completely. But anyway, in the class, she really wanted to fit in, but she struggled because she was acclimating kind of sort of to Germany, but really missing her home country, as we all would. And so this is the name of her speech: Sitting in Two Chairs, Torn Between Countries. I will never forget it. I still have her speech. It's painful.
Wow.
And I thought about that when I was reading the Solito by Javier. Can you imagine what a 9-year-old felt? Even though he's with his family, his parents, eventually, he left behind his grandpa that really set him on his way. So is he torn or not? Is he still sitting in two chairs wondering, how's grandpa doing? I'm with my parents. I can't even imagine that. I haven't had that experience. But just to remember how my student felt, and she was 21 years old at the time. I can only imagine what this child felt like.
Yeah.
So torn, sitting in two chairs, torn between countries.
Yeah, Manuel, please.
I can't figure out how to raise my hand. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I think it's a small enough group, we can just kind of come off mute and speak, so.
Okay, so I'm just going to preface my comment with that um, reading this book has made me so much more sensitive about the world around me. And this week in Iowa, it's been a very difficult week. So when you say, do you have a personal experience? I was thinking, listening to the people talking, you and Evelyn saying about your experiences. And as a child, I don't remember knowing anything about, I was a child in New York City. Everyone was from a different place. But I don't remember knowing anything about their immigrant status or trouble. And when I was in high school, or what you might call junior high, seventh grade, my best friend was from Jamaica. She had just come from Jamaica. And I don't remember hearing anything about it being a challenge or a problem or documentation. So that's the backstory. And then come this week, and I volunteer in the food bank, and that's all kinds of international people that have mixed status, and probably many of them are not documented. And then right in one of the markets downtown, what we would call a high-end market, they grabbed one of the workers and threw him to the ground and put his hands in cuffs and raised his hands up so you could tell it was hurting his shoulders. And this was in front of families in a grocery store. And he was already a known, he was trying to be documented. He was already going to his meetings at the courthouse. They had an ankle bracelet on him so that they knew where he was all the time. The people that came and took him weren't in any kind of uniform, had no badges, and didn't wear masks. And we're in a Republican state, so I think it's a new way they're approaching this issue. So they purposely did this to this person. They knew he would be at work, and he was gainfully employed, and he has a child born in America. So he has an American, what we would call an American citizen child, um, which is changing. And they did this. So the point is that he's not my friend, but I feel like he's my friend, and it's my community. And then I had the privilege of seeing his spouse talk with an interpreter on the next day. They had a big public meeting out in the courtyard with the mayor, and just her saying that they came here to be safe and have a better life, and it's like worse than where they came from right now. So that's it. So someone in my community, my community family has been hurt by, immigration status. And I don't know how they got here. I hope they didn't do what poor Javier had to do to get here. I hope it wasn't that hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have not read the book. In fact, I don't even have the book. just got an email that uh, identified this class and or this meetup, and
Mhm.
I decided to join in and listen to see what you guys were reading about.
Mhm. Okay. Thanks, Kathy. Yeah, Jane.
I'm going to still raise my hand because
That's
uh,
okay.
I'm a great one for talking over people, especially we don't know who's going to talk. Um, I had friends uh, in Atlanta. They started out where the dad um, and he started and his daughter were doing yard work for me because at the time I was an architect and I didn't have time to do that and I had the money to pay them. And somehow, well, he had another job. Somehow, I'm not sure how this works, but his family, he had a son and a daughter, and then the daughter that helped him, and his wife all had citizenship or their papers or whatever it was that they felt they were legally in this country, but he didn't for some reason. And the guy that ran his place of work, which was some kind of factory or something, they used that to their advantage. You know, it's like even if you find a job, you know, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
People use that as leverage, you know, the being people. So, you know, they work so hard and they can't get a break, but I think it all turned out great in the end. So, yay for them. Well, so far.
Yeah. I think you hit on a key part or a key point that people are when they come to the United States and they aren't documented, there is already so much oppression, but the fact that there's that fear attached to their status is, it's a whole nother layer to it. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, we can go to the next question. So, did your views change after? I mean, I know there are a few people who haven't read the book, but did your views change after reading the book? And why or why not?
Yeah, after hearing Mindful speak about the situation in her area, and I was looking at the notes that I wrote down here. I'm thinking, she's saying exactly what I wrote down, just in different words. And what I wrote down here is that immigrants are human. They are human. We don't say that. We don't. I don't hear it at all. I just hear those immigrants, or they don't say undocumented because that's too nice of words to say. But they're human. These people are human. And I think that serves as a reminder for us that if they're human, they have dignity. If they're human, how do I want to be treated? Do I dare treat them the way that I want to be treated? We're called to do that. So there's a huge lesson in here. My views haven't changed necessarily because that's the way I treat them anyway. But one thing that I do, though, is say immigrants. I don't say the immigrants are human. I don't say that this is a person. I use the same word. That's changing for me. They're not just immigrants, they are people who need to be loved and cared for like I want to be loved and cared for. I think sometimes we complicate situations by thinking, well, how can I make it better for them? How can you make it better for yourself if you're in that situation? I think the question and the fingers point right back to us. What do we want? And we're called to want the same thing for our neighbors, our community, as we want for ourselves. So that was my big takeaway. And just then thinking about the word community as they traveled, how Patricia and Carla took on Javier as their own mother, brother, whatever. Well, these are my neighbors. They have the same right to humanity and rights as I do. But I don't talk about that. I don't talk about that, but I'm going to.
I love that.
Sure.
I love that. I mean, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm careful about the words I use, but I think even just using the word immigrant kind of makes it more at a distance. And
Mhm.
it's like we do need to say, my friend, my neighbor, this person, this 9-year-old boy, this young mother, this, man who's been, whatever the situation is, to really humanize yeah, that I will definitely take that away too. Yeah, please, mind well.
I was just gonna say I thank you, Evelyn, because that's it. That's how Javier survived. It was he made a little community. I forgot that part, but that's what he did. Everywhere, every time he was moved around, his little community came with him. And exactly, yes. When I'm at the food bank, I feel um, indebted to the community of people that use the food bank. They're my friends and my neighbors, and I look forward to seeing them weekly. They're not, it doesn't matter what their status is. Sorry.
No, no need to apologize. That is exactly right. And I think that that's by telling the story through a 9-year-old perspective, I think also helped, for me anyway, really humanize it, because all of a sudden, I mean, whatever people's opinions are about anything, when you hear a child's perspective on something, there is that sense of innocence that I think most of us think about when we think of children. And then he's a child, and I could relate to then parts of his community. Well, of course you'd swoop in and say, you're part of us now, so it's just another way to see the individual and the larger community as well. So yeah, you're both of you are that's so true. Kenneth, please share.
One of the things, I didn't get this change from the book so much. I Googled Solito and Javier, and one of the things that came up was an interview that he did on the Today Show. And they took him back there to the desert and interviewed him. And something that Evelyn mentioned about the two chairs. And I thought it was a stunning comment that he had, and that was that there is the dream of America, and then there is the reality of living in America. And for him, those things don't line up at all. And it appeared that he was seriously questioning the decision to go through all of that to come here, even knowing that he would reunite with his parents, at the same time knowing he would be leaving his grandparents, who were essentially his parents for 8 or 9 years, or at least a number of years. And so if he, who has been through all that, was questioning the choice of coming here, I don't know how that would be possible, but how many, I guess the question I would have would be how many other people coming here seriously question and perhaps even regret the decision.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah. I've wondered that as well. I mean, in some of the interviews that I've seen, he alludes to making peace with his parents. And, I know from, I think we could probably all think about times that we reflect back on our own childhood, and you think, why in the world did my parents do XYZ? Um, and for me personally, I understood more, I could answer that question a little bit better once I had children, and you realize, you're just doing the best you can at that given moment. Or even as you get older, you realize, gosh, XYZ isn't a good place to be in, period. So, there's that ability for the forgiveness. But in this particular case, where we hear in the book what his thoughts are about what is the United States, and everybody has a swimming pool and everybody has this and that. And then the reality of it, like you say, Kenneth, it's like you just wonder, it's like, how is that now? And how does he reconcile that now? And I was even thinking now, I don't know about him, but him personally, but like other folks who have come here and then maybe can't go back or to see their family, and what that does to your person inside you too. It's like it's a really I can't quite imagine what it would be like to leave my family and my friends and everything I've ever known and never be able to see them again. Just the idea of that is intense. Yeah, Jane, please share.
I am watching Project Runway now, and that applies to this because several times I've well, that and I watch baking competitions, but several times I've heard people, not necessarily from European countries, because that's a whole different kind of ball of wax, you know, unless they're of color a lot of times. Um, but they say, I am so grateful to be here because I never could have risen to this level. I never could have had this good a life if I hadn't come here. So being in America is this double-edged sword too, for us and for them. I mean, for the people coming in, not them, but the people coming in.
Thank you, Jane. Does anyone else have a comment on that particular question? If not, we're going to question number 5. It says Solito is set in 1999, yet immigration issues have polarized our country. What can you do in hopes of affecting change? What can you do in hopes of affecting change? I think we've already heard some of it this morning. Um, I'll begin because I find it rather easy actually. As an educator, I'm not inhibited by it. And I think to a large degree is simply finding an opportunity to have a conversation. It's not hard. And you know what? If you know just a few words in Spanish, they're going to surround you. I had this experience just on Friday. I volunteer not in the food pantry like you, Manuel, but I volunteer in my church, and we have kind of like a food pantry of sorts. We have everything, I think. But I serve breakfast and lunch. I'm a team that serves breakfast and lunch to the unhoused. And in that group of unhoused, there are a lot of immigrants, a lot of immigrants. And so on Friday, I saw these two ladies. I didn't know them very well. I'd seen them before and had very brief conversations. But what I did, I just started talking Spanish with them a little bit that I knew, and they stopped in their tracks. And what I found so funny, and we all laughed, is that they corrected me. And they say, no, 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 señorita, no, 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 no. And they corrected me. And then I just simply say, ¿Cómo se dice esto en español? And they talk with me. And then I'm thinking, okay, this was good. And I said, so I'm going to teach you Spanish every Friday, English every Friday, and you teach me Spanish every Friday. And they said, okay. Then the older lady in the group, she went back to do something later. I mean, something in her area. And she came back to me and she started speaking with me in Spanish. And I got closer. I said, no entiendo nada. I don't understand anything you're saying. And she slowed the conversation so I could understand her like that slow. And it was fun. We all left laughing. And you know what? They know how to find joy in anything because that culture is a very warm culture and they are connected to each other. So for them to have a conversation with me is like having a conversation with anybody else in their community. It's just the way they roll. So I think if we understand how they are, not how we need to go to them and have them be, because they're already warm and friendly. And they're trying to like wondering, why aren't they talking to me? So we just need to open our mouths and say a few words. Like this one lady, she said, buenos dias in Spanish. And then she said, do you know what I said? I said, yes, I said, I understand that. It means good morning. And she laughed because she thought maybe she doesn't know what I'm saying. So I'll just tell her in English. And so just those kinds of laughing, fun, easy, friendly, no intimidation kind of conversations are worth having. And next time, I promise you, we are going to meet again and we're going to further the conversation. I'm going to know about their families later on. I'm going to know about what's going on with them because I dare to hang out with them and make mistakes and have them correct me. It's that easy. So that's what I would say. Engage in conversations, show kindness. And you know what else I would say? Watch the language. Watch the language. Be respectful of the language. What I was trying to say earlier, don't just say an undocumented immigrant or asylum seeker. Ask what their names are. We can do that. It's one thing I want people to do is use my name.
Mhm.
Give me my name. I think that's a Shakespearean something. You guys, I don't know what the name of the play is, but I can't remember now. But anyway, give me my name. And I want them to have their names. There's so much respect in the name. I don't want to just say those words anymore. Just really, I'm changed by that. Okay, Melissa, take it away.
Yeah, you also said something that I think is so important with any communication that we do, whether it's your next door neighbor or um, somebody else, meeting people where they are
Yeah.
and not assuming that they need to come to you, but you meet them where they are. And that uh, I think is so important in any relationship or interaction. I mean, it doesn't even have to go as far as a relationship, but I think that there sometimes people have assumptions. They come into any kind of conversation with an assumption that it's going to be XYZ about another person, and just meet them where they are, exchanging a name,
Could,
exchanging good morning. Yeah, go ahead.
I just say one more thing? And this reminded me of Manuel when she was talking about the man in her area that was handcuffed. And then, but this is what really caught my attention when you were talking, though, Manuel, is that you said the next day, his wife. So that means you were following up. We have to do that too.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to go shortly, but what my comment was going to be that we need to stand up and show up for our community. We all need to do that. It doesn't matter where, when, why, or how, but if it's the next day, we need to go. We need to show up, and if it happens in front of us, we need to capture the information because it also happened to the superintendent of schools in Des Moines, which is a giant city, and they're saying lies about him um, carrying weapons and doing things to make it sound like he was a criminal, and he was an Olympic champion. He was not a criminal. And they're making him sound like the traditional um, brown-skinned role in America. This person is bad. He came from another country, had knives and guns and money, and nothing he had was illegal. So it's showing up on Fox News apparently that he's, a bad person, even though the Des Moines community loves him. And again, it's just this weird scenario that's transpiring. So the community is showing up for him. And I know everyone else wants to say something. So I'm going to say thank you so much. You're giving me hope and joy being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, I think, Mindwell, when you said, you have to speak up, it is so true because, there are a lot of untruths going on. And I think that when we address those as we see them, it's really important. It's really important. Kenneth, yes, please chime in.
I tend perhaps to be overly cautious, but if at the end of this and after the recording has stopped, I'd be happy to share a little bit after that.
Okay.
Can I chime in?
Yes, please.
Going back to what Evelyn said about not making them an immigrant, but having them be who they are, having them be people. I think just to treat, just to meet them where they are. But how do you say this? Treat them like, think of them as you think of your friends, not like, and that normalizes things. And I think when people who have this misunderstanding of people from other countries, they see you talking like like you are, like friends. I think that normalizes it. And oddly enough, this horrible situation that we have now is really making people look at their misconceptions, the brutality, is making them look at their conceptions about what is true about the people from this country that they misunderstood and what is false. And I just think sometimes, and what is that? The sunny lining of the cloud or something like that.
Silver lining.
Yeah. And also one thing though, and I kind of have seen this a lot because just my circumstances, I've been part of that group of people that is serviced as having less than most people. And one thing is to, in our giving, to let them give as well, instead of like some people doing work meaning well, it reads as it's us and we are giving to you. And so I think that's one thing we have to watch too, is we are friends and listen to their ideas, ask them what their ideas are and everything, instead of us just telling, what we're going to do for them, whether you want it or not, you know. And I think that's very important. And well, like Evelyn is using their names and everything, that's so important. And they are teaching Evelyn. So they are giving something. So that is just a perfect thing. They get to have pride because they're teaching Evelyn. So I think that's a wonderful situation.
Yeah, thanks. Andrea, please share.
Hi. So one thing that I don't think anybody's brought up yet is money. Money is important. And going back to I don't know if it was the last question or the question before about has this changed your opinion on anything? It just kind of helps reinforce that even if you think that you don't have enough or everything that you want, there are people who have even less than you. So I always would like to be there in person to be helping with my hands. But everybody's in different stages of their life, so you can't always be there with your own hands and your own body to help. But money does help so that the people who can physically be there do more. So I think, what can you do if you can't donate time yourself? Maybe, instead of doom scrolling, you can find good local organizations that are helping and give money to them, or just little things like that. So money helps things happen. And it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be $1,000. It doesn't have to be $100, even $20 or $5 a month. or anything very small, because like back from the previous question, it's like you think that your life is hard, try trekking through the desert 3 times to go see your mom, like you don't know hard. You don't
Yeah,
know hard.
yeah,
And doing that at age 9 without anybody, like, so, yeah.
no, you're absolutely right, Andrea. Absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, Mindwell. Oh, see you later, Mindwell. I think that's what you're saying. Yeah, thanks so much. I hope you join us again. Yeah, or you too. Yeah, thanks for joining us. Um, I think this is transitioning well, which I think what can you do to educate yourself um, about this really complicated issue?
Is it okay for me to jump in?
Yes, please, Kathy, please share.
Okay. Um, I have an experience from my past that I think would illustrate some things that we could do. As a chaplain, I was in the hospital and I was called to visit this family whose mother had died. And when I walked into the room, I saw that they were of the Islamic faith.
Mhm.
And I immediately knew that I didn't know anything at all about their faith. Of course, I've heard things and people have said things, but I personally had not done any research, didn't know anything about it. And I happened to be wearing a Christian cross that day. Those two things were hindrances to me being able to provide comfort and ministry to those people during the worst moment in their lives when their mother had died. And what I learned from that is when you're dealing with a particular group of people, take the time to learn about their culture and to be aware of things that might lead them to have the interpretation that you're being disrespectful. And so I wanted to share that.
I think that that is so important. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit in other ways of like getting to know people, but I think that Kathy, you really um, zeroed in on something that is key about like what are we doing in this very moment that could be perceived as disrespectful or insensitive. And I think that we've probably all experienced, I know I have experienced big moments in my life where, especially growing up in uh, the Midwest in a really conservative lily white place where I said earlier I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew. Um, but as adults, I think it's important for us to always kind of be on that quest to figure out, am I, as I am sitting in this world today, conducting myself in a way that is open and inviting to others, and trying to really key in on that. You really gave us a great example of that, Kathy. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I'd like to make one comment too. Um, one thing that I know about the immigrant community is that they love to cook. They love to cook. They love to serve. And so the reason I'm saying this on this past Friday, well, anytime we serve breakfast, more specifically lunch to the unhoused, we were asked to sit and eat among them. We eat the same things they eat, nothing different. And so I guess I'm a little bit biased, but I always look for the younger group because I'm wondering how did they get here? What is their story? And so on Friday there was two young Hispanic women, and I'm thinking, I got to see if there's space beside them. And then one of them, her name is Beyonce. So I said, Beyonce, you got to save me a seat. And so she did. And I went to sit with them. She has an amazing, amazing story. She's only 18 years old. I won't tell you her story. But the other one, Jennifer, also has an amazing story. But they were both talking about cooking. They live like in a place that's provided for them. And so they said, we really want to give back. We're always coming here. We're always eating. What can we do to give back? That's just the way they are. They want to give back. They want to help. And so I kept listening to what they were saying without comment. And so Jennifer walked away from the table. I said, "So do you like to cook too, Beyonce?" "Oh yeah, I love to cook." Well, I had learned earlier that Jennifer likes to bake. So I'm thinking, I know the person in charge here. All I got to do is ask her. But I did not know that we're gonna have this big meal for Thanksgiving. I thought all the food was already taken. Everybody's already got a responsibility. So I called her over and I said, "These young ladies would like to be on the baking team or the cooking team." And she said, "That's really amazing. We still need someone to make the mashed potatoes." I could have missed it. I could have missed the blessing for them and for myself too. And they were delighted. And I said, "Girls, you know what? I'll buy the potatoes. Just let me know whatever you need." Because they had already, you got to listen. Sometimes you have to listen real fast to what people are saying. And the 18-year-old said, "I'm not sure if I'm going to have the money." And I read her body language too. She wanted to, but was embarrassed kind of because she wouldn't have the money. I'm thinking, I'll take care of it. You just let me know what you want and I'll come pick you up. We're going to go shop together. So it's those kinds of moments that we have to be ready for. And Melissa, we call that relational organizing. Sometimes it happens a lot faster than we plan for it to happen, but it's still relational organizing. It's not going to diminish anything. And I don't want the glory. I don't want the pat on the back. I want them to shine, and they will that day. Because they have to make a lot of mashed potatoes because we're expecting about 130 people. So, but they're going to love it. That's what they do.
Yeah. And you hit on two things. One, you like then talked about you could sense the woman didn't know if she would be able to afford the potatoes. And then
Yeah.
back to what Andrea said, sometimes money helps and it doesn't have to be a lot. It's a
Yep.
sack of potatoes,
Yep.
and then the other piece, as soon as you mentioned it, was like, oh yeah, food.
Hmm.
That's something that I
Everybody.
am very passionate about. I am very passionate about cooking, and I've thought about different times in my life that I've gotten to know people, and oftentimes, there's food involved. No matter what situation, there you can have conversations around the table. I took a group of kids. I worked at a school once, and I took a small group of kids to Japan, and we lived with host families for about 3 weeks. And I knew a lot about the Japanese culture because we had hosted Japanese students for, by that time, like 15, almost 20 years. I also did ESL tutoring, and so I'd gotten to know many Japanese families. And I had always been very interested in Japanese food. But then when I got the opportunity to travel there, first of all, was very uncommon to be um, invited into a Japanese home in their living quarters, because the homes are much different than ours. But at any rate, I got to be really good friends with one of my hosts in the kitchen, and she had this little bitty tiny kitchen, and neither one of us, I mean, I didn't speak enough. I could understand a little bit of Japanese. She could understand a little bit of English. And her husband was like so concerned because here I was in her kitchen, but she and I were just fine, and he was trying to translate. But again, we just had this conversation. She taught me how to cook things, and I had no idea what she was saying, but it was all over food. And I think that food can be that medium to open our hearts, and so whatever those things that you're passionate about in your immediate day, to be able to find those and share those with other people are really important. So I want to, if we can, really use the remaining time. And Miss Evelyn, if you want to open up the chat, if there are any, um, we've kind of skipped around a little bit, but if there are any resources that you can share, please put those in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and share in case you didn't get them in Miss Evelyn's email. One of the things that I learned reading this book that I realized I needed to learn more about was just the historical background of El Salvador. I mean, and to learn more about like, certainly many of us now know about just the United States, without getting political, the United States roles in a lot of different countries of destabilizing those environments for our own interests. And I realized I needed to know more about that. So some of those resources I'm going to share in the chat, but I'd also like to hear from others about resources they've learned about or what they can do today.
I don't have a link for this one, but I'm very familiar with this group, and you guys might be too. It's American Friends Services Committee, and it's AFSC. It is one of the best organizations out there.
Can you
And the reason
repeat
I
that
say
again?
American Field Service Committee, and they are a group of I'll just slip my mind, Quakers. They're Quakers. And it was in 2019 that our local Indivisible group worked with them. And that was during the time that the Homestead Detention Center in Florida was getting a lot of public news, and we wanted it shut down. So we, through them, we connected with our senators and representatives directly, talked to their offices directly as we were having we hosted our event at Panera Bread where we live. And we were strategic along with a lot of other groups in getting that place shut down. I just remember, and I have followed them since that time. They work very closely with the immigrant community, very, very closely. So they are one that if you want to get involved and get to see action take place or see updates on the latest ways you can get involved, it's that group. And then locally, I think it would be good if everybody would check with their own state. For us, in our Indivisible group, we use what's called the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. It's called ICER. And we've worked with them since 2018. And earlier this year, I believe it was, we had a Zoom meeting where one of the key attorneys for the group was one of our guest speakers. So we've hosted him about 4 or 5 times already. So yeah, and we're working closer to being partners with them and supporting them financially. We just haven't gotten to that point yet, but we're moving in that direction. We have to, take care of some logistical things and legal things too.
Yeah,
And another one, of course, is ACLU.
yeah.
Always the ACLU. And then there's a national, that might be on your list and I missed it, but the National Immigrant Justice Center,
Yeah, no, I don't.
NIJC.
Yeah, I don't have that one. The ACLU is listed, and I also added the Indivisible link. Um, the Florence Project, if you know of anybody who is an attorney, um, and that's specifically what they're needing because they're needing folks to go in with for immigration hearings and things like that.
Yeah, I actually had considered signing up. There's a little test you have to complete, and I just haven't taken time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else have resources? I just wanted to share too, if anybody knows of younger folks that are newly in this country, the resource that I listed under education resources, I was part of this. I worked at Northern Arizona University, and I mentioned earlier that it was part of a grant that could potentially go away at this point with the Department of Education, but we created a it was called the Senior Launch Guide, and I have a link in the chat for that. And it gave, one of the things that and many of the folks that we served were first generation individuals. And so there was so much that they needed to learn about any kind of post-secondary option. And there, and even folks who, for instance, in Arizona, people who are not documented, they can still get access to in-state tuition, and that was a law that was passed in our last election. But there are lots of different um, opportunities that people just don't even know about. And so this launch guide is something that kind of step by step walks people through not only services and scholarships and things like that, but like, what do you need to do in January? What do you need to do in
Mm.
October? What do you need to, I
Mhm.
mean, so it really takes kids step by step through the process. So if you know of anybody who might benefit from that, and the guide is also available online. I mean, they can download it from an online resource, and it's totally free. So
Okay.
if you have any organizations that you're involved in that deal with young folks, and it's even a great resource for anybody who is thinking about their post-secondary options, if you know of any young people, because it kind of takes the pressure off of mom and dad if they do have parents that are involved. Even it's a nice resource for any young person or any family that has somebody that's looking at, what do I do after high school? So
Yeah. This is Hispanic Heritage Month, September 15th through October 8th, 15th. And so I think what I'm going to do is actually copy your links and share them in the Move On community.
oh, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
some people may be interested. If it's one person, that's one person
yeah,
that wasn't interested, didn't have the resources.
yeah,
So I think I'll do that. And yeah.
that's good. Anybody else have any thoughts before we go? We're getting ready to wrap up here.
This has
Yeah.
been great.
Oh,
This has
thank you.
been so great. And I look forward to more discussions on more books like this.
Are you on our mailing list? I think you're on our email list, right, Jane?
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay. Okay. All right.
The first one, I think, well, I didn't have the book, but then I think I just had a conflict that was something that I would have picked this group, but it was something that I only had that single opportunity to do. So,
I
but
see.
I,
Yeah.
I just, this has been great. And I hate that I missed the last one.
Well, you have our calendar then, because I sent out the email with the calendar for the last quarter, and those dates are pretty safe. If you're on our
Okay.
email list, you should have gotten the email, I guess a couple of days I sent it out, the newsletter, and
I think so. Let me check.
it has the new calendar. And if you
Okay.
didn't get it, just send me an email because you have
Okay.
an email address.
Okay. Thank you.
Because October, November, December, those calendar dates are pretty set. And
Okay.
I'll
I'm
update
excited.
I'll update you as soon as I can once we know what the topic's going to be.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you
thank you.
too. This has
I
been
did.
wonderful.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Evelyn.
Go ahead.
I wanted to point out another one of these resources in the list, this Food Not Bombs. Um, One of the things that I have also learned is folks that are in marginalized, some of these marginalized communities also don't want to take the risk of giving any personal information. And sometimes, for instance, food banks will require some personal information. And that's one more barrier in the situation. So many communities across the United States have they're very it's not an unorganized thing, but it's very low key, kind of under the radar, and it's called Food Not Bombs. And I have a link in the chat as well about that. And generally, if you just kind of Google Food Not Bombs in whatever your community is, you will get, oftentimes it's a Facebook group, or there's just like one little quick page on a website that'll tell you about drop-off locations where you can actually take food, and they will list different things that are needed, but it's all anonymous. And uh, it takes a little getting used to, because one of the reasons, Miss Evelyn and I have talked about this before. One of the reasons that I like to get involved is to learn about people and individuals and put a name with a face and all of those things. That's really important to me. But once I learned that that can also be a barrier for folks, I understood that it's like, okay, there are these other opportunities too. So it is completely anonymous. And for those folks who like that, this is a great opportunity. And even if you just drop things off or you need to get food, those are other options as well.
Hey, well, thank you, Melissa. I hope this was a good, positive, life-changing experience for you. I know it was for me.
Oh, it was a blessing to be a part of this. Thank you so
Thank you for
much for
leading.
letting
Yeah.
me do this.
So I'm going to stop the recording and then because I think Kenneth had something